So we got a message in our Discord a little while ago. I'm just going to read it. So I've spent a ton of time trying to structure my work time, and since I have issues focusing, I keep bumping back the time, and it ends up eating up much of my free time, and I never then feel like I'm able to relax. I think this ties in with the idea of the Pomodoro stuff, but while that still centers around work time, I'm struggling with the whole unwinding non-work element. It's gotten so bad that I often feel lost and aimless when I let myself step aside from trying to do stuff. And I've fallen so far away from being able to enjoy leisure time that I feel out of touch with knowing even what it is that I would enjoy doing, because I'm so of the mindset that everything has to have a purpose. I don't even know how much free time is the right amount for a healthy balance so that I'd be refreshed for coming back to work. All the things that I know I like to do seem to also take a certain amount of cognitive function that doesn't really equal unwinding. So I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on time allotment for this purpose, daily, but especially weekly, maybe even monthly, and what does that look like for you?
This was from Fionioni, right?
Fionioni.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was an awesome suggestion question thing, but there's so much there, and I am so intimately familiar with that experience that we'll try and even unpack some of it in this episode, but there's just so many different things to kind of consider with that. Very familiar with it though. Real quick, before we get into it, I would like to remind everyone that we are mid-month in our 2-minute habit challenge. And if you haven't done it already, the way you do it is you pick a thing that you think is really cool. Maybe you've always wanted to do it, or you just think it'd be cool. And you do it for 2 minutes. You have to pick a specific trigger or a cue that causes you to do it. Like I make my coffee and I go do the thing. For me, it's I brush my teeth and then I go do the thing. I play piano for 2 minutes. And there's two schools of thought on this. My school of thought is that you do it for exactly 2 minutes and stop. And then Dan's school of thought is that you have to do it for a minimum of 2 minutes, but you usually wind up doing it for longer. And we'll argue about the pros and cons of that in a couple weeks.
I dropped out of that school, and
Oh, you did?
I now attend your school as well.
All right, cool. Well, then there's only one school of thought, which is to do it for exactly 2 minutes.
2
Cool.
minutes, yeah.
Your school folded. Anyway, so do that. Mark it down every day. We have a shared Google Doc, which you can access, but you don't have to. You can just mark it down if you want, but that's what we're doing. All right. So this question is, like I said, it's big. There's a lot of things to think about. So for some reason, I can't think of his name right now. Tim something from Wait But Why. He has this amazing series on procrastination, and he calls this the dark playground. Do you remember this at all?
Wait. Before we get into the dark playground, and yes, I do remember it.
Okay.
Can we just simplify the question and exactly what are we talking about?
Okay. I think there's a couple things. One, you wake up, you start work, but are you really working? Like you kind of work, but then you kind of take a break and get distracted. So you're half doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, and then you're half kind of doing other stuff. And then work ends, but does it? Because you're relaxing, but like you still have some work that you need to do. So you're kind of doing that, and then you're kind of doing stuff. And it's hard to say if anything really changed because it's all sort of blurry and you're still kind of working, kind of not. And then obviously focusing is a part of that equation. It's just hard to stay focused for a million different reasons, which we'll talk about. So that's just one element there, is that you're constantly switching focus. But then another side effect or another piece of the problem is that, let's say you go to relax, you say, okay, I'm going to watch TV now, but you don't actually enjoy it because you have this feeling of, I'm not really being productive. I'm not doing anything. This is a waste of time. So it doesn't even feel good. And the whole point of it is that it feels good and you're relaxed and just enjoying this TV show or game or whatever. So that sucks. So work sucks and relaxing sucks and just life sucks. That's my summary.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
I'm
All right. Continue.
I don't know if Fionioni is experiencing the exact same thing, but that's my experience and what this is like for me.
Mine too. And
Okay.
yeah, when I read her comment, that's exactly what it seemed like she was
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, I've been a work from home person for pretty much forever. I've only had a handful of in-person jobs when I was younger. So like 10, 15 years ish, somewhere in there. And this is a pretty major problem with work from home. If you don't have hard hours and an office to go to, it can still happen there, right? But it's especially bad with work from home where you wake up, you're working in your pajamas, and it's just it's like everything just wants to bleed out to where you're never working or you're never relaxing, you're never doing anything. It's rough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the person that I can't remember his name, wait but why guy, calls it, the dark playground. And as far as I know, he didn't trademark that, so I think we can just use that name because I like it. So we'll call
We're
it the
still
dark
giving
playground.
him credit.
Yeah, right. Well, his first name anyway. Okay. So I took a bunch of notes on this and tried to get out what I think is relevant here, and there's a lot of different ways to slice this up. The first one, and possibly the most important, is this thing that we have not really properly named yet, and I still don't have a great name for it, but it feels like your mind adapts to its environment in a way where it expects a certain amount of context switching and impulse gratification at any given moment. So what I mean is, remember we did the don't unplug your phone challenge?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point of that was you remove your phone from your personal space so that if you get this impulse of, I should check my phone, I should see what's on Twitter, I should Google this actor's name, I should do this, I should do that, you can't. Or if you want to, you have to get up and go walk over and pick up your phone. And the phone is like, it's not the only thing that can do this, but just doing that, removing the phone and then having to sit where you can't gratify those kinds of impulses right away, it's a very strange experience because at first it is very uncomfortable. You're trying to read a book or you're trying to watch a show or almost anything you try to do that is fairly linear, and you get these impulses all the time. And then it takes a while. 24 hours, I think, is a you can feel pretty different after 24 hours. And then even within a few days after that, it really smooths out to where you're no longer having this constant feeling of needing to gratify this impulse. And I think that that's again, a sort of an unnamed piece of it, but it underpins a lot of the problems that you feel during your day when you're trying to work or trying to relax or anything, is that there are these impulses that constantly hit you, and you're living under that problem. And if you're working on a computer, it's like the worst possible environment for that. I picture it as if you were an alcoholic and you were trying to be a recovering alcoholic, like not drink, you wouldn't sit there all day with a beer helmet on and like a tube in your mouth where you just have to not sip it. But at a computer, you're literally milliseconds away from everything. One tab over, or a couple keystrokes and it autofills, and then you're back on Facebook or Reddit or something. It's like it's the worst possible environment for that. So the distraction part, the part where you can't focus, you're trying to work on something and you're constantly having to shift into something else. It's this thing that's in you. It's like an expectation of your mind, and it takes effort, and the world is not built for this, but it is something that you can get away from to where you are able to sit more comfortably and just do one thing. That's a big piece of it.
So you're saying when you're trying to focus, these things keep coming up, and it's very easy to get distracted, which kind of leads to the second part, which is...
Yeah. I think part of the problem is that if you have a thing to work on, I wake up, I got this thing that I'm going to do today, and I sit down to do it, and I'm bombarded by these constant impulses of suddenly the most important thing in the world right now is to open Amazon and see if there's a new, like there's a slightly smaller version of the laptop charger that you already have. I don't know, just some stupid thing that you just have to do. It becomes incredibly important. These impulses hit you constantly, and you're in an environment where you can gratify those immediately. If you were sitting out in the woods with a typewriter, this would happen and you couldn't do anything about it, and so eventually it would just go away, and then you could just sit there and type. But you're not. You're in, again, like the beer helmet situation where it's moments away, and these impulses interfere with your ability to focus, and so you wind up kind of losing that, or you're constantly shifting out of the thing you're doing, and then you're shifting back and back and forth all day.
So, well, you said you had multiple notes on this. This was the first one, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, and we'll circle back to what I think you could do about that. Spoiler, putting your phone away is one of them, but there's more to it than that. The other thing is what I call, I think this is a trait of procrastinators. I know that I feel it, but there is this feeling, I call it the ocean of time feeling, where you wake up and there's this sensation of, I have all day. So what if I spend a little time down this little Wikipedia rabbit hole or whatever? I have all day. And sometimes it expands beyond that. You think I have this project to do, but I have all month. A month. It's just this huge ocean of time in front of me. Of course, it's not a big deal if I just switch context a little bit and kind of do this thing or that thing, or I fire up a quick game of Overwatch, play today, and I'll get back to work later. It's almost the feeling you get at the start of the day. It's like getting into a warm bath, where the challenge of getting yourself focused and moving that boulder, it's not really there, because you have this feeling of, it's fine, I'll just do this thing and then do something else and switch back and forth. It's a hard sensation to explain, but this is something I feel pretty intensely, and I have to really, really work against. Of just like you never have to work that hard because you're always doing something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is a side note, but I have a theory that, you know how people call themselves night owls, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the morning equivalent is.
Early bird.
Morning person. Yeah, early,
Morning person. Yeah, morning person.
But I used to call myself a night owl, and I think it's because I was just a victim of that, where I was just a procrastinator. Not that I'm calling all self-proclaimed night owls procrastinators, but I think that could play a big role in the fact that a lot of people see themselves as night owls, is because they wait until the end where they can't wait any longer, and then they start working on stuff and they start feeling motivated. But
a year or two ago, I would have said, how dare you? You're biased against night owls. I'm a night owl. I'm fine. Now, I'm not so sure.
Right. I say this as a previous self-proclaimed
Yeah,
night owl.
I mean, I've identified as a night owl for a long time. I've felt that people had a prejudice against us, and so what? If I sleep for 8 hours, who cares if it's from 3 a.m. to 11 or whatever 8 hours later is? That's my business, not yours. So on. One of the more compelling things that helped start changing my mind for that is this experiment that this guy did, where he took a bunch of students, because all experiments are on students, but he took them out into the woods where they camped, and he told them, I don't think they had electronics, but he told them, go to bed whenever you feel like it. You're a night owl, stay up late. You're a morning person, go to bed early, wake up early. Doesn't matter. Just do whatever you feel like. But they're in the woods, so it gets dark, and there's not much to do at night. And everybody relatively quickly shifted to pretty much the same schedule where you start to get tired and the sun goes down, and a couple hours later you go to bed and you wake up and the sun comes up. That's just what everybody did. And I know that when I get rid of my phone and I'm not on the computer late at night and I dim the lights in the house, and if I do all that stuff and emulate that environment, I'm not so much a night owl anymore. I actually start to regulate a little bit. And the thing that really sells me is that having done that, and it took a pretty monumental effort on my part, because as I said, I'm not a very good sleeper. I have trouble with it. But getting myself into a consistent schedule like that, the energy spike that I get in the morning is dramatic, where I feel wide awake. Not right when I wake up, but I wake up, and if it's consistent after a while, a few hours later, I get this big energy spike where I'm super focused. I'm very alert. I feel really good, and I feel like I can do really good work. That doesn't happen if my schedule's a mess and I'm sleeping irregular hours. It's more of this blurry, kind of awake, kind of not. I'm trying to go to sleep and then I get an energy spike, which is stupid. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
And I think when I used to think I was a night owl, it more just translated into me being a day waster.
yeah.
Yeah.
Night owls probably don't prefer that terminology, but I think you might be right.
I'm not trying to say everyone is, but anyway, I think this is kind of related to what we're talking about, though, because you will push off what you're working on during the day, or you won't totally focus on it. And so you only kind of half work, half not work. And then
Yeah.
let's say 5 o'clock rolls around and you're, okay, I'm going to go relax. But you still feel guilty about not working earlier in the day. So you're not totally relaxed. But then bedtime rolls around and you get that spike of energy and you suddenly start really working. Some days you never get the spike of energy at the end of the day. But I think in most cases for me, when I've experienced this, it comes at the end of the day when you no longer can do anything. That's when you start doing everything.
Well, part of that might just be the simple fact that procrastination is, it's sort of a lack of urgency,
Yeah.
right? I think that's a common trait of procrastinating, is that there's no urgency, so you aren't focused on anything, so you kind of drift in and out, or just don't do the thing at all. And then the deadline comes, and with it comes motivation. There's no longer you can't give things to future you anymore, and so you have to do it, and then you get the motivation. That's been my experience. So if you had stuff to do and then the day is ending, then suddenly here's your motivation, right?
Right. Okay, but I interrupted you. You were talking about your reasons of the dark playground, which, by the way, why is it called the dark playground?
I don't know. That's what Tim,
Oh,
whatever
okay.
his name is, named it. And I think it's a
Definitely
great
sounds
name.
cool.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
I just, as a general theme, a lot of these experiences are a bit intangible, and once they have a name, you can think about it a little bit better. And so I 100% support naming these things, and I think the Dark Playground is a great name. It's very ominous sounding.
Yeah, it's really scary sound. Is it
Yeah.
like the playground, but it's dark, so you can't really play at the playground? Is that?
Maybe. It sounds
Okay,
very
well,
ominous to me.
I feel like I'm gonna get killed at the playground, but okay.
Right. Okay, so I to start with, I think those are some of the main things that go into it. One is the infinite ocean of time, where you just have this feeling of, I have tons of time in front of me, so there's no urgency. There's no need to get this done now. I can switch at any moment if I need to something else that's enjoyable and not difficult. And then there's the impulse thing. Again, somebody needs to come up with a name for that. I don't know what it is, but it's very apparent if you really pay attention to it, in that you have these constant impulses to get distracted, and if you can separate yourself from that for long enough, they start to go away to where you are able to focus better. There's this other part of it too. I don't Should have put in a little more time here to come up with names, but I don't have a name for this either. Tunnel vision, I guess, is what I'm going to call it right now. But it feels like when you sit down in the morning to start work, that's the moment that matters. You're starting work and you're supposed to focus, so that's what you got to do. And if you start to focus and you can't, or you're feeling agitated and you have these little impulses happening and you switch to something else where you're not working anymore, you think, God, I messed up. I had my moment. I missed it. Now I screwed up and now I'm distracted. And you try to get yourself back and then you get distracted again. You think, I keep screwing up. What's wrong with me? And there's this feeling like all the little decisions you're making and your willpower is just not up to the task, and that sucks, and you feel guilty. All that stuff is tunnel visioning on that moment. But I don't think that's the way you should think about it, because the stuff you do the night before and the night before that and the day and the weekend and everything, all of that plays into what you're doing in that moment. And I know this from powerlifting, right? Just as a kind of simple example. Let's say it comes time to where I'm going to try and set a new personal best for my deadlift. And so I, walk up to the bar and I'm about to attempt this deadlift. And it feels like I have to try as hard as I can to lift this weight. And if I can't do it, then I have failed in this moment. I just wasn't up to the task. My mental fortitude wasn't there. And I failed. But that's dumb, because what matters is the 6 months or 10 months of preparation that I put in to try to make myself stronger and build my technique and all of that stuff that leads into that single moment. And that single moment is mostly a test of my physical condition and how well, or how good my diet was and how well my training schedule went and my adherence to that program and everything. Like, it's the sum of those months and months and months before, and in the bigger picture, even the years before, of just being a powerlifter and trying to learn how to do this. But it feels like if you miss the deadlift, it feels like it all came down to that moment and you failed. And I think that same thing happens, like I said, with the impulse thing. That is something that you train over time. If you choose to remove yourself from the environment where you're constantly gratifying impulses, it takes time, but that starts to go away, to where it comes time to sit down to work. You sit down, you get started, and you aren't bombarded by these constant impulses to switch, and you are more comfortable with being able to focus. But it's not so much your willpower in that moment, it's everything leading up to that. It's the training that you put in beforehand, and that even includes the hours of leisure time or relaxation where you're just sitting on the couch watching a movie. That plays into your ability to focus a few days later. And I think that's something is very infrequently acknowledged.
So, in preparation for this, I wish we had come up with the challenge of, I don't know what it would have been, but I tried to create one. So 2 days ago, I tried to suffer from this, to heavily suffer from this. So I sacrificed a lot of good work on the weekend.
Okay.
But,
you're a hero. Cool.
Yeah, so I started working, and I always had the music playing, and then anytime I felt like switching into watching a YouTube video or whatever, I just did it. And I just tortured myself for the whole day. And so, yeah, all throughout working, I would just check my phone anytime I felt like doing that. If I wanted to get up, I'd just go get up. It was the worst day in terms of focusing ever. And I did that on purpose. And then when it was time to be done with work, when I was on relaxing time, I brought my phone with me and I was constantly typing on it and sending messages. And I'm talking to my wife, and then I'm also talking on Discord, and I'm annoying her, and I'm typing out nonsense. Nothing's making sense. And it was really frustrating from when I woke up to when I went to sleep. I mean, the entire day was frustrating, not only for me, but I was also frustrating people I was with. It was just awful. And what's weird is that I followed every impulse. I followed everything I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to check my phone, I would just check my phone. If I
You,
wanted to watch YouTube, that's what I did. I just did everything that my brain wanted to do.
yeah. You did this for a week, or how long is
No,
this?
no,
Okay.
one day.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
only sacrifice a day to that.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really interesting that if you do what you want to do or what you think you want to do, you end up feeling really awful.
Yep.
I mean, we all know that if you just eat candy and ice cream all day, you end up feeling really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what you need is not always what you want. In fact, it's pretty rarely what you want. And the day after, so today, I tried to do the exact opposite. And every time I was working on one thing, I said no to anything else that came along. And that was much harder, but it felt so much better. And if I'm going outside, I don't bring my phone. I don't bring a journal or anything with me. It's just me going outside, and I'll play with the dogs or whatever. But it's just one single task. And if I'm working, I don't do anything else but that thing. And it's harder, as much harder, but it felt much more wholesome, which it's not like these results are surprising.
Right.
But it was interesting to watch myself just completely indulge in the awful stuff. And sure enough, I felt really awful by the end of the day.
Yeah. It's a gross feeling. And it's not exactly exhaustion, but it's a very particular thing where you feel bad. You feel gross.
You know what? It felt like I had two different minds, which is a weird thing to say. But I would be focusing on something, and then the other part of my brain is focusing or wanting to focus on something else, or wanting to do something else at all times. It's these two separate things. And it was very clear. And if you start paying attention to it, you notice it. And it's this weird I can't think of the word. It's like this weird vibration that happens in your head. It's like two magnets that are pushing against each other, and it starts to get really frustrating, and your work quality, of course, suffers,
Mm-hmm.
and you end up doing exactly what Fiona is talking about in her comment. I don't know. It was just interesting.
Well, part of what I have found, and tell me if you agree, is that I think this is something that you change over a period of time, where I don't think you just wake up and go, no, not today, and you just focus perfectly the whole time and deny yourself every impulse. Because everyone tries that every day. They're always like, no, today I'm going to be really focused. And then they aren't. And then the next day, like, no, today I'm going to be really focused. And they aren't. And I'm not saying that willpower isn't a part of it at all. But for me, this has just been a thing that I've struggled with forever. And what I have found is that if we're talking about the focus part, there's more to this problem than just that. But focusing is a thing where you have to change your environment. And if I do that, it takes a little while to adjust, but then suddenly my mind just starts to clear up. And it's as if I'm stronger. It's not that I'm going to try harder next time for the deadlift. It's that I'm stronger now and I can lift more. That's what it feels like for me.
Okay, well, first off, I don't think it's this thing that I no longer struggle with, like I used to, and now I just totally don't.
Yeah.
There's a percentage of it in pretty much every day.
Sure.
But yeah, so it's still something that I'm always working on. Just learning how to focus and work on your schedule. But okay, so before I got my job, I used to paint, real paintings all the time. So how do I describe? So I would always have a painting on an easel, and I was home a lot because I only worked part time. So I would be painting a picture, and I was I was trying to teach myself art and learn about all this. I would, spend the day painting it, and then I would try to stop working on that after 5 o'clock. But then every time I walked into my office or my little studio, I would see the painting.
Yeah.
And so then I'd be thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then as I'm thinking about it, walking around the house or while I'm watching a movie or whatever, I'd go back into my room and just dab at it a little bit more, or, think about how am I going to solve this little problem in it? Or, what artist does this really well? Oh, I should be looking into this book to find the answer for this or whatever. And so I was just always thinking about it. And then I would take a picture of it. So when I'm brushing my teeth or whatever, when I'm not in the room across my house, I can look at it and, flip it back and forth and just see it in a different way and just think about it. And I was, even though I'm not in the studio painting, I'm just thinking about it and thinking about it all the time, because I thought that that's what you had to do to become really good at something, just constantly work on it. But then I got my job, and I would have to drive to the office, work on the thing, and then leave. And working a 9 to 5 has plenty of other issues attached to it. But this one little aspect was so different than what I was used to. Because I'd go to the office, and then at the end of the day, I had to walk away from my painting, and I couldn't take it with me. And it was so painful. I didn't want to do it. Like it just felt wrong. It felt wrong to walk away from that. But what I started realizing was that was so beneficial to just be able to walk away from the work, not able to think about it. That just changed everything. And so ever since, I have absolutely incorporated that, because I began to see the difference of when you're removed from that environment where you can no longer keep looking at it or keep checking or keep obsessing about it.
Mm-hmm.
It just changed everything. And I still do that. I try to be really very aware. If I'm working in Photoshop, I'm working on a piece or whatever, now I have to close out of Photoshop. I have to close out of all reference pictures, all Google tabs I have open or whatever. Like, it all has to be off the desktop, or else I'll just pop it back open every time I sit down, or I'll see it when I walk in the room. So, and if I'm working on a traditional piece, I turn it around or put it away, and I just learn to say no.
Okay, perfect. So that very, very nicely transitions into the other kind of main thing I wanted to get into here. So the focus stuff, the focus stuff has to do, I think, with this thing that happens over time where you tune yourself into lower, less frequent impulses, or you're not gratifying impulses all the time. Focus is very important. There's a lot we could talk about there. But the other part, what you're talking about, plays into the time is an ocean problem, where that's just, for me at least, as a pretty severe recovering procrastinator, I like to say, there is, I'll do the same thing. I'm not an artist, but I'll be trying to figure something out, and it's the middle of the night and I gotta go to bed. And so I put it on my phone. I've done literally the same thing where I'm brushing my teeth, staring at the phone, and I'm in bed, and I can't stop because I just need to throw every moment of time that I have at this problem. And I think that was just a massive, massive error in my understanding of how to be productive and do well. Here's a silly example. So I just got my Steam Deck a couple weeks ago.
What is
a week ago? So a Steam Deck is the latest thing. It's like a Nintendo Switch, except it plays PC games, which is just really cool.
I wasn't sure if it was that or a cooking thing.
No, not a cooking thing. It's a video game handheld thing. Anyway, I'm super excited about it, and I have this giant Steam library because I've bought all these Humble bundles. You don't know what I'm talking about, it doesn't matter. I have a ton of games, and so I got super excited that now I can play them all on the couch with this thing, and it's like a controller, it's a handheld. So I'm looking through my library, and I've got all this stuff. I'm like making these playlists of this game that I've never touched, and that one I've always wanted to play this, and I got this giant list of games that I gotta play, and I gotta beat them all, because I never have. This would be great. And so I'm playing this game called Cave Story, which is from the 90s. It's this old platformer made by one guy, and it's a really famous indie game. This guy just total labor of love made this beautiful game. It's really, really charming and fun and everything. Anyway, I'm playing this game. I've always wanted to play it, but I never had the attention span. Side note, I haven't used my phone in like 2 weeks, which has had these kinds of benefits where I'm now capable of picking up a game and just playing it straight through. It's totally linear and super dated, but I can do that now. And anyway, don't use your phone. The end. Don't just okay. So I'm playing this game, trying not to draw too many parallels at once, but I'm playing this game, and I've kind of got this schedule in my head of, okay, tonight I'm gonna finish this game. I'm gonna beat it, and then the next day I'm gonna start playing Sekiro, because that's this game I want to play. I'd started, but same thing, got distracted. I want to finish that game. I got this schedule in my head, and so it's evening time, kind of relaxing, or it's time to not work anymore. Like, cool, time to beat Cave Story. So I'm at the end, and I'm trying to beat the final boss, and the final boss is like bullshit hard, just stupid difficult. It's not even it's 4 bosses in a row, and you don't get any kind of health boost in between. It's just brutal. And I'm okay. Tonight's the night. I got to beat this. So I play, I die, play again, die, respawn, die, over and over. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to learn the patterns and the movement, and all right. So I'm grinding away at this for like 3 hours, and I even knew what mode I was in. I'm in the can't stop, won't stop mode, where I'm just play, die, okay, try again, play, die. I'm like, no, I'm gonna beat this game tonight. This was my plan. I have to beat it. And it just gets worse and worse, and it's getting later and later, and I just can't get through it. Like, ugh. And so I finally give up and go, I guess I suck at games, and I'm a failure, and I put it away, and I go to bed. And then the next day, get through the day, do my work stuff. Somehow resisted the temptation to try it again during the day. Finally, okay, time to play again. Pick it up, beat it first try, no problem. Not even a hiccup. Just slayed every boss all in a row, done. And I win, and then I play the next game. Okay, so I'm not trying to tell everybody how to play video games. There's this thing from, I think this was from Atomic Habits that he mentioned in the book, and this was one of my favorite parts of the book, where he talks about a judgment of, and maybe it was ultra learning. He talks about a judgment of learning is this thing, a JOL, where when you're learning something or you're working on something, you don't have some sensor in your brain that can tell how well you're learning or how much information is being absorbed into your head or how much you're adapting. You don't. So you have to use cues and other things to try to make this judgment of, yeah, I'm learning stuff. And we rely on a lot of things. One of them is just how much effort you're exerting. So I'm sitting here trying to beat this final series of bosses in Cave Story, and I do it, and I'm focused and struggling and just really working at it, and I die. Like, okay, again, let's do it again. And I go back and do it again, and it's hard, and I'm kind of mad and just really grinding it for hours and hours. And that was stupid. It feels like I'm working really hard to try and beat this boss, but I'm actually just being an idiot and wasting my time and making myself frustrated, and I should go to bed. What I needed was to freaking sleep. And the reason I needed to sleep was more subtle. And that goes back to Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. And I was thinking about, I'm not really thinking about this in the moment, but after the fact, after I beat it like a cakewalk the next day, I'm remembering this experiment that Matthew Walker did, in that book, Why We Sleep, where he took people and you might remember us talking about this, but he took a bunch of people and put them in a lab and had them learn this sequence of numbers on a keypad. You remember this?
Yeah. No, this has stuck with me for a very long
Okay,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful little experiment. But so he takes these people, teaches them a sequence of numbers on a little number pad. He teaches this to them in the morning. They have X amount of time to practice this, and they're trying to type this sequence of numbers as fast as they can. Then he takes these people and he tests them again at the end of the day, and he finds out that it's pretty much the same. They're able to type with, this X amount of speed, and it hasn't really changed much, right? He takes a different group of people. He does the same thing. He teaches them the sequence of keys on a number pad, but he does it in the evening. And then 12 hours later, the same amount of time in between, he tests them again. But in this second group, they sleep in between. So he teaches them in the evening, they go to sleep, they wake up, they do it again, and they're far better. And not just better, but different in the sense that the way I think he describes it is that it's less chunky. Where when you learn it, you learn these little short kind of bursts or associated little patterns, and it's this couple numbers, 275, 831, 022, and it's like chunked in your mind. After they slept, it's not chunked anymore. It's all one thing where they just do it and it all comes out in this smooth sequence of numbers. And the difference wasn't time and it wasn't effort, it was sleep. And what happens, he used a MRI or brain imaging, and when you learn it, it's in your hippocampus. Then you go to sleep and it moves from your hippocampus to your neocortex. It literally gets relocated in your brain to somewhere else, and it gets assembled in a different way. And then you do it again, and it's different. You're drawing from a different part of your mind, and you're able to build on that and add new things and evolve that piece of information in your head. And that's 100% what happened when I'm playing Cave Stories, that I'm thinking that I just need to play harder, focus harder, work harder. Same effect as I need to focus more and put more effort into the deadlift. But what I needed to do was stop and go to bed and sleep. That was the best course of action it could have taken. And then I just, like I said, 1-0 problem. Okay, I know I kind of took a long meandering path to say this, but I think that this is a major component of this problem that Fionioni is talking about. That it feels like the best thing you can do is just work harder and throw more time at something. But that's not really how we work. And I could have saved a lot of time, quote unquote, playing. I don't know why I quoted myself. I could have. I didn't need to. I don't know why I'm struggling to say this. I didn't need to throw so much time into Cave Story. That wasn't optimal. Putting more time in didn't help me. Going to bed is what helped me. That was the right thing to do. And there's a lot of stuff that is like that. And playing a video game is sort of a performance-based test thing, but I found the same thing playing StarCraft. I found the same thing at work, on projects, on anything. It feels like just putting more time in, doing more work is the best thing you can do. That's how you get ahead. But in many, many, many cases, it isn't. It doesn't help you. It can even be detrimental. And what you have to do is stop. Like you said, you at first because of work, but then just from your own understanding of things, you force yourself to stop. And you're not just pouring time into this thing and thinking, I gotta work harder, I gotta work longer. You stop, you cap the time off, and you let yourself take these big gaps of sleep. Sometimes literally sleep is what you need, but also just rest where your mind is not sitting there focusing on the thing. You let some of these background processes happen where things kind of get combined and consolidated and less chunky, and that's just a process that has to happen.
Okay, so remember?
Sorry, that was such a long thing.
No. Okay. Remember a while ago I told you that I used to learn like rap songs in the car ride to work, because I had such a long commute. Well, I haven't done that in years. But there's this new, well, I don't know if it's new because I don't have TikTok, but there's this trend on TikTok, I guess, where people have been learning Godzilla from Eminem, which is, I guess, his fastest song. It broke some record, whatever.
Okay.
And Heather she said, I bet you couldn't learn this. Like, I know you think that you can do this, but I bet you couldn't learn this. I was like, come on, I'm too cool to do that now. She's like, yeah, no, there's no way you could do this. I was like, fine, God damn it, I'll do it. So
she manipulated you into learning
yes.
this. Okay.
Yeah, so I did. But the way that I did it was because I was thinking about your little typing sleep experiment thing.
It's not mine. It's just something I talked about.
Well, yeah, the one you mentioned. But I decided to just, go at a very simple pace and really test out how well sleep worked with how I was able to memorize the lines in the song. Mm-hmm. And have you heard the song?
No.
Okay, there's a lot of words in that song, okay? Yeah. And they're really fast, really, really fast, okay? And when I first heard it, I was thinking, okay, there's no way in hell I can learn this. I don't know what these kids are doing. How are they doing it? But so I printed out the lyric sheets and I brought it with me in the car. Not that I was reading it while I was driving, but I would listen to the song, try to do it. If I didn't know something, I'd look at the paper and try to memorize it. And I'd be able to learn, I don't remember how many lines, and it definitely depended on the line itself, but I learned, let's say, 6 lines, just low key doing it that day. And those 6 lines were real hazy in my mind and real kind of tough to do. And I had to really, really think hard to remember them. I'd go to sleep. The next morning I wake up perfect. I mean, just so perfect. I just knew them. It was so weird. And I just did that again and again and again. And it was so amazing to just see, because I would do that at night too. I just kind of, 5-10 minutes, I would, listen to the song, try to remember a couple lines, whatever. And it was such a strain to try to remember them. Go to sleep. You're talking about 10 hours later, all of a sudden, I know it now. I mean, flawlessly. It was incredible. And so, yes, I cannot say enough about the sleep. And I do this with art too. If I'm very, I've just drained my entire being into this picture and I can't get it to look right, it sucks. And it's just awful. It's just like your game. You want to pour more and more time into it because you just want it to be done. But now, well, I literally just did this yesterday, but I failed at this yesterday. But now I know that if I just stop, go to sleep, the next day I'll have the answer. I mean, it's literally that simple. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, okay. I can't talk about this today because in 2 weeks we're going to talk about the 2-minute challenge. But I have been playing piano for 2 minutes a day, literally 2 minutes. I mean, I set a timer on the watch that's not on me right now, and when it goes off, I stop. Hard stop. And at the start of this, I can't talk about this.
Yeah, we can't talk about it. No, 2 weeks from now we're going to talk.
Okay, just the spoiler is that it's been amazing, and it has revealed so many things that I just didn't understand or appreciate about learning piano, and it's been awesome. And it felt like torture, and it felt like a stupid waste of time at first. Of what are you going to do in 2 minutes? That's nothing. Literally no time at all. But no, that's wrong. And if you really know how to approach it, it took me a while to start to understand how to approach it. But once you do, and you start to understand the relationship between today and tomorrow and the day after and the day before, and you start to think that way, it's amazing. It's incredible. It's like this. Anyway, we'll talk about it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that.
Well, so with the song, I'd go up to where I knew, and I could tell if my brain wasn't getting a little bit frustrated, then I wasn't really learning anything, and I wouldn't have anything new tomorrow. So I got to the point where I could recognize where I would feel a little bit of resistance, a little bit of frustration, a little bit a couple lines where I really, really had to think, and I knew that all I had to do is get to that point where I'm pushing myself a little bit, and then the next day I would know that.
Okay. All right.
Which I
We can't
assume
talk
is what you're
anymore.
experiencing. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. All right. That's it. So, okay. Let's. I want to solve a couple things since we sort of took a
Well, but
meandering path
I
here.
want to say that the reason I just want to connect this back to our initial thing.
Okay.
This is important. Why? All of our sleeping stuff. Why is that important? To me, it's because, or it should give you some. It should convince you that letting go is very important. That allowing yourself to let go of obsessing about something is very important. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So for me, I think creating a time boundary on something. There's a few things here. Creating a time boundary, saying I'm gonna work until 4:30 and then I stop. It helps eliminate that feeling of, oh, time is an ocean, I can do whatever I want, I'll just throw more time at it, it's not a problem. If you think whatever I'm going to get done today has to happen before then suddenly it gets a little different, and you start to get a bit of a better perspective of, okay, what am I going to get done, what actually is important here. And it just changes your relationship to that period of time very much, in a way that can it almost forces you to be more focused. It almost forces you to think big picture. It has a lot of very, very good effects where if you aren't thinking that way, you just kind of throw all your time at something half-assedly, then you kind of drift around, you sort of do one thing, you drift into something else. Maybe that thing isn't the most important thing to do. You're not really having to be judgmental about it and think, okay, I'm not going to work on X because Y is more important. It just, that whole process is kind of gone where you're just sort of wandering through stuff. So creating a time cap on it, I think, is very, very important. But the other part of that is that I think it is very important to understand that more time is not always better. There is a limit to what you can do in terms of learning. And I've experienced this a lot with StarCraft. This is the biggest thing that really revealed this to me, is that I have a window of time every day where I can play this very intense, very competitive game. And if I go too long, my performance degrades badly. And if I go for really too long, it'll stick around for days, where I can totally ruin myself for almost the entire week because my mindset just gets trashed. I get all this built up fatigue that lasts into the next day. And this isn't a physical thing. I'm not talking about lifting. I'm talking about playing a game. I have a window. It's around 2 hours ish. But in that window, I need to be very focused and very present and very clear headed, because once it's up and things just get worse. And so I can't just play for 8 hours a day. That was my naive thinking very early on of, well, I'll just play more and I'll get better. No, it's not how it works. So I have to think about that 2 hours and think, okay, how do I make this 2 hours really, really good? Because I'm going to have to stop. I'm going to have to go to bed and sleep and let things consolidate and, become less fragmented. But I can't change that process. Like that's just a hard limit of, I can do this. And there's techniques, being able to be more relaxed and try to alleviate the frustration and fatigue and all that stuff. Maybe I can get more time out of it, but no matter how you slice it, there's a limit. And I think you have to think that way for what you do, for your job, for your whatever it is you want to do. You have X amount of time, and then things just get worse. And it's very hard to realize that it's getting worse. The only reason that became very apparent in StarCraft is because it's objective, and I win or I lose, and I can look at my win-loss ratios and things like that. But there's not a strong feeling that comes up where, I mean, you can start to get in tune with it and notice it, but it's not like after 2 hours it suddenly hits me and I go, oh man, I feel terrible, I gotta stop. I can tell I'm not learning anymore.
Yeah, because that's not the reason that your brain jumps to. It jumps, for me at least, it jumps to an emotional
Yeah.
solution, as if, oh, I'm just not good enough and that's why I'm failing. It doesn't come to the conclusion that, oh, I'm just spending way too much time on this. I need to take a break. It's, oh, I'm not good enough. And the the reaction to that is, oh, okay, I'm going to work even harder. I'm going to prove myself wrong. And
Right.
so you just, yeah, dig yourself into the ground.
I don't know why this is, uh, but there seems to be an inverse relationship between those two things. Like I'm playing Cave Story, right, trying to beat this boss, and the worse I'm doing, as my performance is degrading, the less willing I am to stop. I
Yeah.
My desire to just go one more time just goes up and up, and I don't know what's going on there.
Well,
But I experience this for everything.
you want to end on a good note. You want to feel good about yourself. And if you walk away right then, you're a failure. You suck if you walk away.
I guess
And
so. It's so strong though. It's really
yeah, it
strong.
really is. I mean, if my painting sucks and it looks like a toddler did it, I don't want to walk away from it because then all of
Yeah.
a sudden that's who I am. So, yeah, it really runs opposite to what you should
Yeah.
do.
It's powerful though. I mean, I this happens in StarCraft. If I'm on a win streak, I want to stop. I want to walk away. It's hard to make myself queue again. If I'm on a losing streak, I can't stop. It's almost impossible to get myself to walk away. It's a really powerful thing. Uh, and it's even worse when you're working on a project or something where you don't even see your wins or losses. Like, it's not quite that apparent and objective. You're just you're coding, you're writing, you're doing whatever. It's hard for you to go, wow, this is really bad. I'm really doing crappy work right now. Like, you don't even really have a good sense of that. So
Yeah.
the point there is that you have a window of time, and that's it. That's all you get. So use it well and then stop. You have to stop because you'll do more harm than good. And when you approach your day of just, okay, I'm going to work and then stop and work and stop all day long, you're squandering that window of focus and high performance. And more than likely, you're just piling on to, you're adding fatigue to yourself, and you're not using yourself optimally. Sometimes the best thing you can do objectively is to stop, put the thing away, and let yourself sleep. Let those things move from your hippocampus to your neocortex and let those processes happen. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, there's so much in this one comment. I feel like
I know.
there's we can't cover it all. But the guilt is something that I've struggled with for a long time. It's just
Yeah.
feeling like you always need to be working. And that's a really hard thing to let go of. And I think the thing that finally helped me was just being forced into it. Like when I got my job where I had to walk away from it and then I could see the results of it. That's when I started to believe a little bit more in letting go of things. But it's really hard.
Here's something that I have found really helpful. Back to the focus thing for a second, which again I think is a really, really key underpinning part of this, is that you want to improve your ability to focus so that when it's
Yeah.
time to work, you can focus, and that means you're productive, and then you can stop, right? So this used to be terrible for me when I was in doing my music degree, where I just was utterly incapable of doing anything remotely relaxing or time wasting. It was terrible. I could not sit there and watch a show or a movie or anything or read a book, nothing, because it felt like I'm not being productive. I have so much to do. I have to do it. And of course, I wasn't actually that productive, and I would sit there and I basically quit playing guitar because I couldn't make progress. I mean, just grasp the tremendous irony of that, where I wasn't able to get better despite thinking that I had to throw every single second of my day into trying to get better. Like, absolute utter waste in that sense. Anyway, it was really, really bad then. And that's like a feeling that's persisted for a long time. One thing that helped me a lot was understanding focus. and how it is something that progresses or improves over time, day to day. It's not a willpower thing. It's a practice thing, in the same way that, lifting is you do it every day and you get stronger. It's not you just try it super ultra hard and you lift more than you ever did before, right?
Right.
So my wife and I were watching Cowboy Bebop, not the new Netflix show that turned out to be not very good, the old one. And it's an old show, and it's sort of slow and a little dreamy, and it's a great show, but it just feels dated. It's not like grabbing your attention. But I remember she wanted to watch it. I had already seen it a long time ago, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm gonna watch a show that I've already seen, so it's, TV's a waste of time, but this is extra a waste of time because I've already seen it. And so we're starting it, and I just have that feeling of just not being comfortable, having a really hard time, and I'm wanting to just sit there like on my phone, kind of casually read things, and
Right.
productive things, which again are not actually productive at all.
Right.
But it during that process of us watching the show, I thinking more about focus. I think this was during our like meditation month or something. Anyway, it kind of hit me that I sit down, I watch this show, it's 22 minutes or something like that. And that is a 22-minute opportunity to practice just focusing on something. I know it sounds weird, but that was really helpful to me of, okay, the best thing I can do right now is to sit down and just work on being able to just keep my mind focused on this show and to enjoy it and to
Yeah.
appreciate all these things about it. And actually, if you put the phone away, you just, in every way you can, don't allow yourself to just your mind to drift away or to get distracted. If you kind of limit yourself to say, okay, this show is all I'm thinking about, it's all I'm watching, it's just what I'm doing right now, suddenly, well, not suddenly, gradually, you start to appreciate all these things that you didn't before. You start to listen to the voice acting. You start to look at the animation. You start to appreciate the imagination that went into the world and the art and just even the text on the walls of the ship and how it's stylized and creates this theme. And suddenly, again, not suddenly, gradually, stuff starts to get revealed that becomes interesting, and this thing that feels shallow and kind of a waste of time, you realize it's not. It's actually great. And you really start to appreciate it, which, one, that's just enjoyable. So, enjoying things is really important. We're not going to live forever. Try to enjoy stuff. So there's that. But also, it was good practice. I mean, if you want to think about it from a productivity standpoint of doing something useful, it's useful in that it's sort of like meditation. It's a practice. You're actually improving your ability to keep your mind in one place and to notice things and make connections and all that. Like, it actually was a really beneficial thing to me.
Yes, 100 times yes to everything he said.
Okay.
Uh, the the not allowing yourself to just follow all of these impulses. I really
Mm-hmm.
think that this problem, the biggest main thing is that you're just not focusing on
Mm-hmm.
simple tasks. And what happens is, okay, so let's say you're working on something until 5 o'clock. Uh, After 5 o'clock hits, if you haven't been focused on your work, you know that. Like deep down, you
Yeah.
know that you were not focused. And so then you feel, well, I don't want to be someone that doesn't focus, so maybe I'll make up for it now. But I'm not really supposed to be doing that, so
Yeah.
I'm only gonna half do it. And it would be it would be much different if the whole day you had worked really, really hard and you felt proud of yourself and good about yourself. Then you feel like you deserve to relax. Uh, yeah, absolutely. There's days where I spend the whole day not focused and it feels awful. And I have just really set myself up for a bad day. Um, Yeah, I really think that the biggest factor in this problem is just what you just said, is not allowing yourself to follow the impulses.
Yeah, and the other piece of that too is that there's the time duration part, right? So let's say you work for 5 minutes and you goof around for 5 minutes, right? You could total up that time and say, I worked for 8 hours. But it's not a, there's no depth there, right? And not all work requires depth. If you're just sorting your laundry, then you don't need to be super focused or
Right.
anything. 5 minutes here or there is fine, but there's a lot of things that, like for my job, trying to do software design, if I'm not focused, there's certain problems that I cannot solve. There is no amount of 5 minute chunks that solve that problem, or worse, 30-second chunks before I'm thinking about something else, right? Sometimes it requires, it is not optional that I get into a very deep focused mindset where I'm thinking deeply about problems and really getting at the roots and understanding and recognizing what I do and don't understand and coming up with a solution to this difficult architectural problem. And actually, that's a, in my field of software development, there's tons of coders, there's tons of people who can just write some code that does some stuff. But when you get into architecture and really designing a system that can grow and become large and not become overly complicated, that's pretty rare. And I am positive it's because of that. It's because there's just a
Yeah.
lack of focus.
Same with the design work that I do. I
I'm
mean,
sure,
you
yeah.
wouldn't. There's certain times where you just like I've never been more focused or worked harder than some of the stretches of time I've spent doing
Mm-hmm.
that design work, and yeah, it's it requires something else, like just a really just everything a human can offer. That's what it requires in order to do a really good job,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to do, and it's no
Mm-hmm.
wonder why you resist it because it
Yeah, it's tough.
yeah, it's kind of exhausting if you do it for a while.
Yeah. Which okay, so I think part of the prompt here was the fatigue part of it, and I think that if you are really focused, you get fatigue. Um, Part of the appeal of the dark playground is that it's not very tiring. It feels disgusting. You hate yourself by the end of it, but it's not really fatiguing in the same way. Where if you're just doing these shallow moments of kind of work, kind of stop, kind of work, kind of stop, you don't build up that fatigue like you can if you are really really focused for these periods of time. So a couple thoughts on that because this is something I definitely struggle with, or have. So the deep focus is in many cases a requirement. You have to do it. It's something to practice. You want that. That's how you do really good work. Or push yourself somewhere you haven't been before. Like I said, for playing StarCraft, trying to make it into Grandmaster League, I have to have that. I'm mediocre forever if I can't achieve those moments of high intensity, high focus. But they're tiring. So you have to get there. 100% have to get there, but you can't do it for very long. So part of what you do is you take breaks, not I have an impulse to get distracted kind of break, but a defocus, walk around, let your mind start consolidating things kind of break. Like you take those breaks frequently and you limit the time where you say, depending on how intense the thing is, I can focus really intensely for an hour and then I stop, or I can do it for 2 hours and stop. But it's not a 8 hour thing. I don't think anybody can do that. Not if it's really high intensity. And then the rest of your time you can fill with lighter stuff where it's more menial and you don't have to focus as hard. But I think you have to think of it that way. But even though it might not be a huge amount of time, that really deep focus, you have to get there. You have to if you want to be really good. Um, so that's how I've kind of come to think about that. But your goal should not be ultra focused on ultra high intensity things for 8 hours a day and then you stop. That's not realistic.
Right.
All right, we've been talking forever about this. which I knew would happen. I knew this was like way too big of a thing. A couple. This has been a little bit high level. I have written down some very simple, concrete things that I wanted to talk about or just briefly say that I have found helpful for this problem directly. So, for the impulse thing, thinking that willpower is your tool to fight it, I think is wrong. I mean, yeah, there are moments to use your willpower, but I almost think you're better off just pretending that that's not a thing. You know, thinking that you're going to wake up and the next day is going to be better. Every day is like that. You know, what makes it different, right? So what you should put your energy into is changing your environment because you adapt to it. You really do. So I think it's a week ago, actually. It was last weekend. I had realized that I was just using my phone too much. You know, we did our week of no phone and we talked a lot. We were really, you and I, really focused on how phones are evil and they suck up your attention and all that stuff, and they mess up this impulse thing that you have.
I think we did it for a month, but go ahead.
Well, we did the don't unplug your phone challenge for a week.
Oh, I thought it was a month.
You're wrong.
Okay.
I'm positive.
Am I? Okay.
I'm mostly positive. A month would have been a long time.
We
Whatever.
should have done a month, but okay.
We should have. I agree. Totally. Anyway, we, for whatever length of time it was, we did this thing and I was really on board with that. I mean, that was exciting and I loved it. And I'm thinking, man, I just feel so much better. But of course, because of the novelty problem, which we talked about a few weeks ago, that just sort of wanes where you're just not thinking that much about the phone thing. And I just slowly start to use it more. And it just kind of seeps back into my life where in the evening, I'm sitting on the couch with the phone, browsing stuff, just thinking it's not that big of a deal. It's fine. I don't think I use it that much, right? The novelty problem, like, just wrecked me there. And last weekend, I realized, okay, I'm using it too much. It's making me anxious and it's distracting me and it's messing up this impulse thing. So I spent a couple days thinking, use it less, use it less, use it less. And it just wasn't happening. And then I finally realized this is dumb. I have to change the environment. So Sam and I went somewhere and I left the phone at home. And it was like a several hour trip out across town and no phone. And so that was just, once you leave it at home, you can't do anything. And so I'm sitting in the car and we're doing stuff and I'm kind of feeling that, like, I'm bored. I want to pull my phone out and I can't, just can't. So the environment's different. And then I kind of rode that wave into, okay, I'm going to plug it in again. I found a new spot for it. You know, here it is. This is where it lives. And I will not unplug it. And I kind of set up some rules and I figured out a couple things of, okay, I keep using my phone for this thing. So I'm going to figure out how to do that on my computer and just try to change the habits and the environments around it to where I don't use it. Sure enough, without any intention of this, within a few days, there's been this secret project that I was trying to work on. And for now, it will remain secret, but I had put a lot of work into it. Coincidentally, very close to that time where we weren't using phones very much. And then that slipped and I hadn't been doing it. Well, this week started working on that again. Not out of some grand intention to do it. It just sort of happened because I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I don't have, I'm bored. Start thinking about this project, start getting into it. Then every day I'm starting to work on that and it's amazing, right? So, okay, anyway.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, just that's it. Changing your environment rather than trying to lean on willpower, that's the way to approach that problem. Don't think that every morning you wake up, you just got to grit your teeth, white knuckle your way through a day where your willpower is the only thing keeping you from getting distracted. Change the environment where you can't do it as much. Your phone is the simplest place to start because you can just not use it. And that just helps over time. Suddenly again, I keep saying suddenly, gradually, things change to where you just don't feel the need to get distracted as much.
Yes. That thing that we all say, oh, I'm going to try to do this less or I'm going to try to do this more.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's never, ever, ever worked. When I was trying to teach myself art and like really make some drastic life changes because I was
Mm-hmm.
changing my career and teaching myself stuff, I decided not to watch TV less because I had tried that. I had tried to just watch less TV or whatever, but I decided to not watch TV at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed everything.
Yeah.
And now I treat things in that way where if you want to stop doing something, don't try to do less of it. Just stop doing it or find a way that completely inhibits you from using it the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Like the phone, plug it in somewhere else or just change your environment. So, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
It's funny because, again, going back to the judgment of learning things that feel hard aren't necessarily better for you type thing. I think it's kind of that category of leaving your phone at home when you go somewhere is a relatively small decision, but that can have a really big impact where it feels like if you're sitting there out to dinner with someone and you're thinking, I'm gonna resist the temptation. This tonight, I'm not gonna pull my phone out
Yeah.
even once during dinner. Like, not that that's a bad thing to do. I think you should aspire to not pull your phone out when you're with people, but just leaving it somewhere else, it feels like a small thing. Or you know, you go to work in your office or your workroom and you just don't bring the phone with you, or you work on your computer, you're writing something, you turn off the Wi-Fi. It feels like a small thing. You aren't really exercising your willpower in the same way, but it's way better than exercising your willpower. But you're just changing your environment and letting yourself adapt. So that's the first big point there. Um,
Yeah, I just agree so much.
good. That's
Yes.
good.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. All right, real quick. This has been forever, so I want to get through this. So change your environment. The phone's a great place to start. Really, really great place to start. But using a computer, if you're like me, I work on software, and it's not quite so simple. I can't just not use a computer. So there's a few things that I've adopted. I kind of have my kit when I start of the stuff that I get lined up and that helps me operate a computer without just constantly getting distracted like this. Couple things. One, if you're gonna do a session of work, I again I really like the Pomodoro technique. I think that's really helpful. So use that, or you want to do something else, that's fine. But what I do is when I do that 25-minute Pomodoro, I don't ignore notifications and ignore messages. All those programs get quit. Like, I make it so that my computer cannot give me notifications. So I'm not exercising my willpower to keep them out of my mind. They just don't happen. The phone is not even in the room, and the computer cannot give me notifications. So that just, again, change the environment during that period of work to where it just can't happen. That's way better than trying to will yourself to not pay attention to it. There's stuff that pops up in your mind. There's kind of impulses of, hey, I gotta check Amazon. I want to look at this stock. I want to do this random thing. The distraction sheet, I think, is really helpful there. So it's not so much about just utterly ignoring it. It's that I have this little list and I write it down when it pops up, and I don't do it. I just kind of acknowledge it, get it down, and then go back to the other thing I was doing. So you kind of give this outlet for those little impulses and moments in a way that doesn't completely derail you. I find that really helpful. I've also started to journal while I work in this very active way, which feels kind of strange at first, but I found it to be really helpful. Where I start and I'll just write down, and I mean, like, in a physical journal. You could do it, with a text document or something if you want, but I actually really like the physical journal. But I'll just kind of say, okay, this is what I want to do right now. And okay, let's start with this, let's start with that. And maybe I'll work for a little while, and then I'll write down what I did, which can be helpful in a couple ways. I'll say, okay, I did this and I did this and I got that done. And sometimes it actually makes me feel better about the work that I did. I'll work for a couple hours and then write it down and go, oh, you know what? I felt like I kind of didn't get that much done, but I actually did. I solved all these problems. And it also brings an awareness to what you're working on, where sometimes you'll realize, you know what? I've spent the last half hour working on this thing that was stupid. It doesn't really mean anything. I don't need to be spending my time on it. So journaling while you work can be a really good tool to help with that.
I'm gonna try that. I like that idea.
Try it out. It's actually really cool. It was a little bit strange at first to just kind of narrate yourself doing something.
Well, I've done I've kind of done that before, but it's not been like a narration. Give me an example. How are you writing this? I mean, I'm sure you're not. Today I feel, rather happy, and I decided to
Well,
start working.
actually, kind of. I mean,
Well,
not
doesn't that
that.
take up a lot of time, or do you find that doesn't really, or the benefit outweighs the time it takes?
Um, well, I mean, okay, like throttle it up or down depending on where you're at. I'm not
Okay.
narrating everything, but okay, so this was a week and a half ago. This was the day actually where I got really frustrated with me using the phone too much. I mean, I'm phone addicted. It feels kind of weird to admit, but like that's not at this moment, but if I have it on me all the time, I become addicted to it, or I'm just using it all
No,
the time. I got really fed up with
anyone
that.
anyone who has a phone, I bet you, is
They're
addicted to their phone.
Yes,
Everyone will say they're not, but they are.
right. I will admit it. I am addicted to my phone, and the reason is that they are built to be addictive. That is the point of that device. That is everyone who puts energy into that thing is trying to get you addicted to it. Anyway, I'm addicted to my phone. I'll admit that. So on this day, I got really, really fed up with it. I'm like, okay, what do I do? So I made a list of, well, I kind of said, all right, I want to eliminate my phone usage day to day. I don't want to feel like I need to pick it up when I wake up in the morning or anything like that. Like it doesn't need to be with me. And I'm just writing this out. Like this is what I want. I want to eliminate the phone. If I go on a trip, I'm traveling, or I go out somewhere, it's fine to take it with me. I'm not trying to eliminate that ever happening. But what I want is to be able to wake up, do stuff, start work, do whatever I want, and not feel like I need the phone. And so I made a list of all the things that I use the phone for. So Hubstaff, which is a work timer thing that like lets you track what tasks you're working on. I use that on the phone. So I figured, okay, that's a thing that I use on the phone. Let's figure out how to solve this problem. My diet tracker. Okay, I use this on the phone. I want to figure out how to use this somewhere else. Text messaging. I use the phone for that. Let's figure out ways around that so I can let people know, hey, don't text me, talk to me over Discord, or in this case, I set up a way of relaying text messages from my phone to Matrix, which is a chat service. Don't want to get into it. Point is, made a list of all these things. Just try to get it all out of, okay, here's all the things that pull me back into my phone. Let's figure out which of these I can solve. And then I went to work on that. And then I wrote down, okay, here's what I did. I figured out how to solve this. I set up an SSH server on my phone so I can connect to it from a laptop. I set up a virtual private network. Like I just wrote out all those things of here's what I did, here's what I figured out, here's the remaining problems. And it was great. It was so helpful because it like lets me capture the entire problem that I'm working on, and it helps me think about why, and it helps me not fixate on parts of the problem that aren't that important. Like I don't need to figure out how to get a bus ticket without a phone because I already said I don't care that much about that. It's okay if I take my phone with me if I'm going to the airport. I'm planning on doing that. What I'm worried about is just I want to be able to live my normal life day to day without using the phone. And so those are the problems I want to solve, and I start making a list of all the things that go into it. Anyway, that's a kind of long-winded example, but just journaling out the whole way through the process was really, really helpful there. And I've started to do that more.
I think we should normalize putting your phone in your shoe. That's all I had to add for that. But
Okay, yeah, I like that.
That's awesome. I'm going to start.
I don't know where else to... Actually, I don't know how to get it there, but that would be a good place because you can't really access it easily.
Just like in the sole of your shoe, just like
yeah, just make it hard to get out.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are some of the things that I found helpful. Distraction sheet, journaling while you work, and I don't do it all the time, every second. It's just I kind of have that as a tool that's available that I can kind of use more or less or whatever. Pomodoro thing I think is really helpful. The time cap. Everyone kind of thinks about it like it's you're focusing for 25 minutes. To me, the biggest strength is, hey, 25 minutes is up, take a break, stop thinking about it. That to me is the biggest upside of time boxing. So I think that's really helpful. Remove anything that can create a distraction. Don't ignore it, remove it. For me, I set up a script on my computer where I type in focus and it closes all those programs and it locks out all these other tabs in the browser and everything. I'm on Linux, so it's pretty different than Windows, but figure out something similar, or maybe just know to close those things out. But just remove the distractions. Don't ignore them, remove them. And then noting. So there's this meditation technique where when you think about something that maybe you don't want to think about, something that makes you angry or something that gives you anxiety, you don't so much go, ah, crap, I thought about it again. You just make a note of it. You just go, okay, I'm kind of thinking about that and not really going to engage with that train of thought right now. That's a very useful technique for trying to focus, where I'm sitting there trying to work and I think about something else and I go, okay, I'm thinking about something else. Let's just kind of make a note of that and not really play into that thought. And I think that's helpful there too.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Yeah, let's close it there.
Okay. It's an ongoing project. Still trying to figure this stuff out. There will never be a moment where I feel like it's conquered because, as I said, it's been a huge, huge problem for me.
Absolutely. And everything Fionioni said is so relatable.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've gotten much better at dealing with this, but it's always a thing.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We'll leave it at that. Do the 2-minute challenge. Yeah. It's really cool. I'm so excited about it. I actually can't wait to talk about it in 2 weeks. It's amazing. I promise.
I know. Everyone's thinking, oh, 2 minutes, can't do anything in 2 minutes.
I know. Just trust us.
Yeah.
Trust us. If you believe anything we have to say. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with this very long episode. Leave a comment. Send us an email at theoveranalyzerspodcast@gmail.com. Send us a message in our Discord. And as we demonstrated today, sometimes we actually respond to them and do an episode on it. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.